welcome back to the Meeple Marathon. Today we're going to take a look at Tanares Expeditions. So if you're watching this video on the day it releases, today's the last day you can back Tanares Adventures on GameFound. Have no fear though, if you are not watching this video on the day it releases, more than likely there will be a late pledge period. There almost always is. And so if you decide this is something you want, you can just keep checking on GameFound for it. So this is very exciting because Tanares Adventures was one of my top games from last year. So I was very excited to see this come out. And right off the bat, there's some glaringly obvious things that are different. Not bad, just different. And some more subtle things that are different. And again, I feel like some of them, some things I'm going to miss and some things I'm going to like about what they have included or excluded from Tanares Expeditions. So in this video, I want to strictly talk about what is different between adventures and expeditions. So let's go ahead and get started. The most obvious number one thing that people should be noticing is the storybook layout for the maps. In previous Tanares Adventures, there was just a basic gray dungeon-esque background, and you had to pull out all the dungeon pieces. It was very tedious setup, very intricate dungeons, traps, walls, everything else, whole 9 yards. Full slate of where all the enemies went, so on and so forth. It always kind of looked the same, and again, it was a little tedious to set up. This is worth the investment right here. Being able to, just lay this open. All of the terrain is already there. They're marking the spots where the villains are going to go. Your starting area, things like that. Everything that you need to remember is listed here. So they are basically combining, so much stuff from setup in the previous one. Here we'll just look at, this is, what encounters 3 and 4. These 2 pages kind of make up your first quest that are broken up into 4, what they're calling encounters. But so you can see the terrain changes, even just the background stuff. But there's got to be so much more they can do as far as environmental tasks and interactivity when they have this type of setup as they did too before, because otherwise everything was just a trap lever or a wall or a fire pit or things like that. So this right here is obvious difference. I think this is a pro right off the bat. Map book style scenarios. The next big thing that veterans of Tanares will notice is that there's only 4 classes. There was 8 total classes in Tanares Adventures. And for some people, I think that's going to be a good thing. It's less complication. You essentially take a striker, you take a healer, 1 controller, and 1 tank into every scenario. Whereas in Adventures, you are having to, let me take a tank or a brawler. Let me take a healer or a sharpshooter or something like that. So here they've condensed it down. I personally liked the even more options, but that did make the game more complicated, making your decisions going in. But personally, I really loved the sharpshooter role, that ranged combatant role. Now, the controller is ranged in this game, but she's more of a mage. This is like tank, healer, mage, rogue, if you're discussing like classic RPG tropes here. She's not so much like bow and arrow as magic, and very different from the controller aspect or class from Adventures. Now, there's not saying that in the future they may, with future expansions, expand the classes out to that full 8 or even more. Who knows? But it's just something that I obviously noticed. There's going to be less heroes in Tanares Expedition, and this is a smaller, just footprint in general, smaller game as of now. But maybe their hopes is to unravel many more expansions in the future. But 4 classes versus 8. Take that for what you will. Some people think it's a pro. Some people think it's a con. I'm leaning a little bit more towards con, but I just really liked the variety in Tanares Adventures. The next thing that Tanares veterans may notice is different is that there's less cards really for the people to control. So in Tanares Adventures, you had 2 standard cards per your hero that were specific to your hero, 2 kind of ultimate cards like we have here. We technically have 2 choices. So this was in the setup, but then you had cards that were specific to your class. So in here, instead, we're replacing those class cards with improvement cards, these smaller cards here. I'm going to come back to these in just a second. In Adventures, you would play a card, and that card would become exhausted. It would go into an exhausted pile. If you played one of your ultimate cards, more than likely it had some kind of passive effect to it, and that would stay active. But once kind of a series was over where you had spent all of your cards and needed to reshuffle your deck and get them, or not reshuffle, but refresh your deck and get them back, that ultimate passive card would go away. Here we have ultimate cards and 2 standard cards, but these never go away. These are always available to you, and it just kind of depends on what type of attack you want to make. This one heals someone. This one, the ally gains a protection or toughened token. So who knows? This second ultimate card can be earned throughout the quest. So through the various encounters, you're going to be literally leveling up your hero within a certain quest. So on this page here, there is 2 encounters, and then you flip over and there's 2 more encounters on the next page, and that kind of makes up quest 1. So you start the game with 2 basic actions and 1 ultimate. If you use the ultimate, it does go away, and then you can earn your second ultimate card later on by accumulating 5 coins. But these don't ever get exhausted. They don't ever go away. You always have these options here. On top of that, since you have less cards to deal with, you have these improvement cards. Now, these are specific to your class. So if you change to, say, the other healer that comes in one of the expansions, you would still be using this improvement deck, but that healer would still have their specific cards. Now, these are interesting because they either provide a really nice one-time benefit, where you'll see this one has the little arrow, so you would have to exhaust it until the end of the encounter. But they are giving you sometimes a passive ability, sometimes here, sometimes just, this one says passive power, but these 2 are passive abilities that are always present. But if you accumulate 2 coins and set them on here, you don't lose those coins, but choose to set them onto one of these cards, you get then the bottom benefit. So this is a pirate game. It's all about, the loot at the end of the day. So you're gaining loot to gain your ultimate card. You're gaining loot to improve your improvement cards. But these, you actually will start every scenario where out of the cards you had played out, the improvement cards, you get to choose one to carry with you. So that one is going to carry over. You know that that's going to be one of your improvement cards. Then at the beginning of every encounter, remember, encounters are smaller cutscenes within the larger quest. You're going to take 3 random improvement cards. You're going to choose one, and you're going to discard the other 2. And so they're out as far as the end of, or this quest is concerned. That's encounter 1. At the beginning of encounter 2, we're going to do this again. So we're going to draw 3, choose 1. The other 2 are going to go away. And then at the beginning of encounter 3, do so like this. And so you can see that as you, even within a quest, you will be growing in power. You also, again, have the ability to earn this card. So there's going to be a lot of cards out in front of you, but they don't all disappear and have to be refreshed like it was in Adventures. So these improvement cards are interesting because if you choose the right ones, they really can change how you play or your style of play per se. But these are class specific, and then you have hero specific cards. The next aspect that is different from adventures to expeditions is how the villains are chosen for the scenario and how they activate. And so this is much more random. It was very much set in adventures. The specific villains, even the colors of the villains, were placed out onto the board during setup. You knew exactly how many there were, where they would be, and each individual villain had a card that would explain what their target was, how they would move, how they would react, things like that. And so you could plan things out. But also, they had this very interesting system that if you attacked a villain on your turn, it would then take its turn next. And any villain that was left alone, per se, throughout the scenario, and it got to all of the heroes had activated, so you had this unchallenged villain, or any villains that were unchallenged during that round would then get to activate at the end, but they would get a boost to their power because they were kind of left alone. They weren't provoked into being attacked, so they had more time to plan thematically. I guess you could look at it that way, or build up their power or focus or things like that. So it was your choice as to how you activated your heroes, as long as, you know, each one activated once and then it became kind of a new round, things like that. But you could also choose the order in which the villains activated, because if you provoked villains in a certain order, that's the order that they would activate. This is very much different. So at the beginning of the scenario, you're going to be given a list of villains, and you're going to grab a blue and a red of each type of villain. So we've got goblins listed. So there's the blue and the red goblin. We have pirates listed. So here's the blue and the red pirate, and the sentinels and the skeletons. So we've pulled all these out, but there's actually, if we look over here, there's only 3 places for villains during encounter 1, B2, E6, and I2. So what we're going to do is shuffle these up, and we're going to randomly draw 3 cards. So 1, 2, 3. There's our villains for encounter 1. So we got 2 goblins and a skeleton. If we played this over tomorrow, this exact same scenario over again, these could be very easily completely different. So already we're talking about replayability here with Tanares Expeditions versus Tanares Adventures. On top of that, now you'll take these 3 cards, you'll take your hero cards, and again, they've all got the same back, so we can mix them up, because these are going to be our initiative cards. These are not the large cards with the stats on the back for the heroes. These are purely just for their initiative. And then we're going to randomly determine what our initiative is. So all the heroes at once, except for one. There's Captain Marine. And so you can see the poor creatures are all going at the end. And they tell you then to slip in this Sea Curse card before the first villain activates. So for this encounter, we are going Captain Doro, Krog, Mavara, then the skeleton gets to go, then Marine, then Goblin. So this is going to stay in this order. It's a locked initiative for both you and the villains. Now there's ways to adjust this within an encounter and move it up and down. And then the beginning of the next encounter, we're going to shuffle all this up and change it all. So there's random part 1. In Tanares Adventures, each villain had a large card this size that told you what their target was, gave you all their stats, gave you their, bonus ability if they were unprovoked, gave you their crit ability, their reaction, things like that. Now we have basic stats on these initiative cards here, and it tells you how they attack, but who they're targeting and any other bonus they may get for the round is going to be determined by these Sea Curse cards. So before the first villain goes, but not any earlier, so you're not given too much information, you're going to flip over one of these Sea Curse cards. And first of all, it gives you a little effect at the top. So this says villains gain one empowered token. So each villain would gain an empowered token to use during this round. And then we have their target. It's going to be a single hero, so no area of effect attacks or anything like that. Red is going to go for the closest person to them, and blue is going to go for the hero with the fewest HP, so the one closest to death. And that's going to change every single time. Here we have red going for closest again, but blue going for furthest. Here we have red going for the most HP and blue going for closest. So it used to be that you could know exactly between rounds how a villain was going to attack, who they were going to go after. You could put the tank in the way. You could keep your controllers and your sharpshooters near the rear of certain enemies, and you were fine. This one, there is much less foresight into what the villains are going to do because of the Sea Curse deck. You don't ever quite know who they're going to target. Now, you can tell that these guys are all like melee. There's no range or anything like that here. Hit 7 damage plus effect, 1 square, 1 square. You can see all that, but you don't know who they're going to go after. And at the beginning of the scenario, or encounter, sorry, you didn't know what order they were going to be in. So I do kind of like this. I like the randomness setup. It leads you to be more on your toes, per se, and react within the moment due to these Sea Curse cards. So that's very different. The last thing I want to talk about here is the amount of narrative and extracurriculars you have between quests or encounters. This one seems to be much more streamlined. In Adventures, you had this entire extra book that you would go through and would give you some narrative, give you these choose your own adventure style choices to make, and sometimes it would even lead you to one quest versus another. So you would start in the city, and then you would choose whether you went after the goblins or whether you went after the thieves, and that would change entirely which quest you took on, and then sometimes that other one would be removed from the game, and you'd have to play a whole nother adventure to try and see what that one would play like. This one I think is much more streamlined. You basically have this just one quest card. It does have one choice here, and maybe future ones will have more choices. It'll have more cards per quest, but this is much more streamlined per se. And then once you have completed the quest, so remember the quest for this one was 1, 2, flip the page, 3, 4 encounters. It's basically going to tell you level up. It's going to give you the chance to improve your improvement deck by culling some cards you don't want and adding cards from a more advanced improvement deck to it. It's going to allow you to upgrade, say, maybe it'll tell you to upgrade one of your level 1 hero cards to the level 2. And it's just going to tell you what that's going to be. You're going to do it. Pretty simple, straightforward. In Tanares Adventures, you had this city phase, between 3 quests. At the end of the week, it was the world phase. And honestly, that was one of the best parts of the game, in my opinion. I really loved the city phase and the choices of which buildings I was trying to upgrade, because that would lead me to be able to take in better cards for certain classes, and it would allow me to purchase and upgrade armor and weapons, which as of right now, there's not really the same level of armor and weapons in this version either. In the other one, every character took an armor and took a weapon into every quest. Here, I think weapons are just going to be kind of extra. There's these chest cards, but as far as the this prototype here, they're all there's a couple traps, but a lot of rum. That's like healing and armor rum. Single-use consumables in this chest deck. I'm not sure what there's going to be in the final product, but I really loved that city phase and the world phase. It was a change of pace and really just felt like I had a lot of control over how I was upgrading my little army, I guess you could say, of characters. So this one has some pluses and some minuses, in my opinion, as the final one. You could either really appreciate the more streamlined story aspect. Everything's here in the book. Cards worth of narrative, maybe 1 or 2 choices. No city phase or world phase at the end. Less like add-on cards to give to each of your characters. You're pretty much just upgrading your attack cards, upgrading your improvement deck, and then let's move on to the next little bit of narrative and the next quest. Also, Tanares Expeditions is touting that you're gonna be able to play quests as one-offs. Now, I'm assuming they'll have some sort of instructions on what level your character needs to be at if you're playing one of the harder quests just right off the bat. But that's not hard to do. But just the simple fact that if you just wanted to show this off to your friends and they weren't invested in the campaign, you could sit down and just have a one-off of Tanares Expeditions. That, again, is something some people may really be looking for. I'm kind of indifferent. Most of the time these games are just for me, and I'm all in on the campaign. So, but maybe with the ease of playing the one-off, maybe I'll bring this to the game group and try and teach them in a night, and we play once, and maybe some of them never played again. But anyways, that is going to do it for our big major differences between Tanares Expeditions and the former Tanares Adventures. Long story short, Tanares Expeditions is a more streamlined and slightly more simplified version of Tanares Adventures. I think they took a lot of feedback from what people felt was overkill or unnecessary or tedious from Tanares Adventures and tried to streamline it down to what we have here. In some aspects, I do appreciate the more complex and more options in Tanares Adventures, but there's a lot to say for Tanares Expeditions here. And the map book alone, I was already all in on my pledge, but the map book alone, I feel like, is worth its weight in, well, it's not very heavy, that's the whole point, but not worth its weight in gold, but worth the price of admissions. We'll go that route. So I will probably be, since I still have the prototype here from Dragora Games, I'll probably do a playthrough of the first quest. I'll probably do a full four-handed playthrough, or four-handed hero playthrough, because that's how I prefer to play Tanares Adventures. I never found it a problem with playing 4, and I loved how the characters all interacted off of each other. I think there's a little less interaction here, and so maybe this one would be a better game to take comrades into, but we'll see. We're going to try and make that happen, but keep an eye out for that if you're interested in seeing some more playthrough content. Again, if you're watching this the day this released, check out the link to GameFound. If not, the link should still be good to take you to the preview page for late pledges, and you can put in your email and be notified when late pledges become available. But I really love what Dragora Games is doing here with the Tanares line. Tanares Adventures was an amazing game, and so I've got high hopes for this one. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Have a great day.